Hi, Sunny.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. In our last Q&A, you explained like two ways of surrendering. And like I've studied the Buddhist traditions where he like gave us the Eightfold Path and like the right action and right mindset and all of that so that we can clear ourselves from identification. But what I enjoyed more with the direct path is because after you have that realization, there's no more you have to do something. You just have like that understanding and you act from that state. So it feels like effortless. Uh does this and you also like one time mentioned that if I am awareness, the mind and body, they have a destiny. How does the relationship which I am awareness can have an impact of the karmic activity of mind body? Like will right action still arise, or like for example if I am just abiding as awareness and a wrongful action comes to mind, I don't identify it with it, but I know that it's not the right action. Should I just like let it be, or I don't
If
know if
you
I'm
ever
making
feel
myself.
like you have the choice, always access the highest action available to you in any given moment. But there
Okay.
are times, as you said, whether you want to call it due to karmic reasons or whatever, you find yourself having acted wrongly or in a way that is maybe out of alignment with the understanding, a way that has brought suffering to you and others. So through the lens of this understanding, though, now you are seeing that even that wrongful action that happened, although yes, relatively it may have been wrong, it is exactly what needed to arise as well. And you yourself will see through your personal journey. This is something that I constantly experience all the time, where you do behave in that way, or something like you end up in a situation where that needed to happen, and you needed to act in that way in order for you to now practice in this new way in that situation and discover something you could not have discovered if you didn't act in that way.
Mm.
So like where do we sit and call this right versus that, right or wrong? You start to see that everything is happening exactly as it needs to happen. So yes, it's subtle and it's hard to put a finger on it mentally, but it is true. Everything is always happening as it needs to happen, even when you are necessarily like maybe emotionally reacting or making a mess out of things. But when you do
Yeah.
have the choice, act rightly.
Okay.
When you feel like you have a choice, do your best to act rightly. Yeah, and even when you act rightly to the best of your ability, sometimes you realize in hindsight that was acting wrongly. It's all as it needs to be, you know. When you have now the understanding and you're discovering it in your practice that you are that unchanging awareness alone, remain unmoved by the happenings of this world, happenings of this body mind. Your ultimate standpoint is the witness. You are the witness alone, not the doing, not the thinking, not the deciding.
Yeah. Because like who am I to judge whether this is right or wrong? If it's meant to happen, it should happen. I should just notice it and let it express itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's this in the teachings, there is something called the prarabdha karma, which is just the karma that needs to be exhausted in this lifetime. And that's going to happen no matter what, no matter how, there's a teaching by Ramana that even the enlightened sage has to exhaust his prarabdha karma. So, in that regard, yes, honor whatever arises, even when it has like a what would conventionally be looked upon as a wrong action or a limited action. Do not identify with it. But from your day to day experience and when you feel like you have the choice to do one thing over another, always choose to act in alignment with the teaching. And also, like, notice your failure to do so sometimes as an evidence of the fact that you're not the doer.
Mm.
Because if you were the doer, you would act rightly all the time in alignment with this understanding. You would just be present all the time. You would do, everything you wanted to do, but you constantly are confronted in this life with the fact that you are not the doer. To your best intentions, to your best understanding, you still, your own thought and speech like happen in a way sometimes where thought, speech, and action happen in a way where you're like, how did that even happen? When did that happen? You start to see that, hey, it's all just happening. It's all being seen. I'm not that.
Yeah.
Mhm. So never is this any an excuse for wrong behavior, you know, because like that somehow sometimes the mind can become dysfunctional with that and it just starts to excuse bad behavior. No, like we really do try to act fully, like, as in alignment with the eightfold path, like do always right action, clear action, action that alleviates suffering and clears our understanding. But you do not fall into judgment over wrong action with the belief that I am the doer. That's where it leads to guilt, shame, entanglement, not clarity.
Yeah, and this is what like I experience sometimes. Like I should not have done it. Like so, it's meant to happen, and just accept it.
And whenever that type of thing happens, you see what you can learn from it. I think, mistakes are unavoidable. Even when you try your best to avoid mistakes, you may avoid certain mistakes, but you'll end up making other mistakes. Like mistakes are unavoidable. So when you do make mistakes or even hurt others by accident or whatnot, there's always a lesson there. So learn what there is to learn and grow in that way and move on. See that you could not have learned that lesson without making that mistake. So have no judgment, have no unnecessary guilt. Of course, we feel guilt when maybe we harm others or we make a mistake. For a little moment where you feel that guilt, it is useful because you can see, hey, well, how can I be better? What can I learn from it? How can I behave better going forward? That is it. That is the only function that guilt should perform, making you more reflective and, insightful. Once you sort of learn from it, acknowledge that this happened, you move on. You don't dwell on it mentally. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very subtle, intricate stuff. We would all go mad if we had to figure it all out mentally. That is why we meditate each day, because meditation brings to you the clarity in the day-to-day spontaneous action. You know, meditation is what meditation and surrender are what make us able to just be spontaneous in this way and discern in live action and, live accordingly. So just the importance of daily practice. It's always the emphasis here.